What's up, everybody? Scorch the Fears. I think this is like episode 48 or something. We've got the great Lauren Hardy. I'm excited to have you. I remember, I don't know if I told you this when I first met you or when we first were emailing, but you were one of the people I remember listening to while I was starting Driving for Dollars 2.5 years ago when I started getting into business. And yeah, welcome to Scorch the Fears.
Thanks for having me. No, I didn't know that. Very flattered.
Yep, it was good. I remember because I was also in California, right? So I was it
Oh,
was
yeah.
interesting because you were telling me your whole story with California and how you were struggling in California and then you started going virtual. But
Yeah.
we'll get all into that. So first question that I always like talking about is the mindset issues that new wholesalers and new real estate investors deal with. Actually, sorry. First, introduce yourself, say what you're doing, all of that type of stuff, just for the people who don't know who you are.
Awesome. Well, my name is Lauren Hardy, and I've been a real estate investor for 10 years. I started when I was 25 years old. I started when I had my first daughter. She was 1 year old. I had a full-time corporate job, and I really would have just done anything to just get out of that corporate job. It really didn't matter to me what it was. It just so happened that my brother started flipping houses a couple years before that time. So he made the suggestion, you should try flipping houses because, you can make, you could just do one or two deals and you'll probably make just about as much as you do in your current salary situation, which at the time was about $52,000 a year. So it really wasn't much.
Gotcha.
So that was my start. I started in my backyard, Orange County, California, arguably one of the highest priced areas in the nation. Also very saturated with investment activity. So it's a very challenging place to do business. There is still people that invest here and do deals here. But for me, I was flipping houses in my backyard, but it just started getting more and more difficult to get that deal. And I always was a little curious about what was going on in other states. I noticed that other people that were in other states didn't seem to have the struggles that I was having. They didn't have to spend as much in direct to seller marketing to get that one deal. They didn't have to make as many offers to get that one deal. And there was just this deal consistency that I was really craving. I call California elephant hunting. It's kind of you get that one big elephant. It's great, but it might take you a while to find that. And the out of state stuff is a little bit more squirrel hunting. They're kind of everywhere and there's more deal volume. So I was craving the deal volume, at this point in my career now, kind of fast forward, right? A lot had changed for me. I had 2 kids now, mouths to feed. I'm a single mom. So I needed that deal consistency to be able to sleep at night. So I went virtual, and that's kind of where most of you guys know me is, from my virtual stuff that I do. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me and my background.
No, I love it. I 100% feel the same thing with California. I was super stubborn. So I was no, I don't care. I'm living in San Francisco. I'm going to make it happen. But it would have been so much easier if I had done I don't know, Oklahoma or any of those other small ones. Cause I feel just at the beginning, you need just 5K base hits just to start getting it going. And in California, that I think it's the best secondary market is what I tell people. So you've got your consistent, virtual one if you live in California or just a smaller market. And then you've got huge ones you get in California. Every once in a while.
Once a year, you get a good flip that you choose to flip or something, and
right.
You do it, and you make maybe 60 grand or something. I can see that.
I love it. So going back to the original question that I wanted to go with, because this whole podcast, I love reiterating it, is about helping people get over the initial fears. Because I think everyone has some sort of mindset issue, especially when they're starting. I even have a few mindset issues still to this day that I'm working through. When you were starting, what do you think your mindset issues were or your fears? And how did you deal with that? How did you push through? What is your advice to new wholesalers, and what were your mindset issues?
Well, 100% mindset is so important. And I still deal with mindset stuff too. I almost call it, it's like a practice. You got to really kind of like work on your mindset all the time, because, our little monkey minds can take over really quick, if you're not really conscious of it. When I first got started, I absolutely know what my biggest fear was. My biggest fear was getting sued. So it's like, because I went from like W-2 employee, and I think this is common of W-2 employees, right? Like, oh, well, like my employer got sued. We're in a lawsuit. Like, I don't know, somewhere in my working career, I heard about lawsuits and how they just ruin your life. Like, that was all I heard, is like lawsuits ruin lives.
Right.
So my biggest fear was getting sued, for sure.
Interesting. So, okay, so it was getting sued. Like, can you think of where it comes from? Because I always think it's very interesting where certain mindset issues come from in general. Of like, that's an interesting one in the sense of like fear of being sued. So, two questions: where do you think that came from? And then also, how'd you get over it?
I don't know. I've never really put much thought into like where it came from. If I had to guess, it was a job I had where the employer was getting sued and he was so dramatic about it. Like, he was just so like acted like it was the worst thing in the world. I mean,
Right.
he really like, and he did all these things in his business after to prevent getting sued again. Like, he just went like the complete opposite direction. No joke. He even went to the lengths of putting cameras in the office and building the office out. So all the walls are windows. Like, so like the
Wow.
cameras could see through everybody's office. So the entire place was a fishbowl. And it all stemmed from a lawsuit.
That is where it comes from. I mean, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
that's like, I've never even heard of an employer
No,
being so like sensitive to that. It
I know.
makes sense in the sense that can be like a burden. I'm curious, have you been sued?
Yeah. So that's how I
Okay,
got
so how'd
over
it
it. You
go?
were going to ask. So part two of that question, part
I
two
love
of that
that.
question was getting sued.
Nice.
is how you get over it, right? How do you get over fears? Is you face them head on. No,
Right.
I didn't purposely try to get sued. I was like a little sheep. Like, it was like my second year in the business. Okay. Like,
Oh
literally
no,
like
that's
year
rough.
two, like month 14 in the business, not 24. I mean, like year one. And then like going into my second year of the business, I had a frivolous lawsuit against me.
So what
And
happened?
it was, so I basically bought a bad house. It's a little complicated, but I can bring it down to an easy level to understand. And it's
Love it.
important to understand it. Okay. So I went to a real estate investment association meeting. Back then, that was like all it was RIAs. And you would go like to these monthly meetings, and like there wasn't a lot of Instagram and the stuff you see now, right? I went to a meeting. I met this guy was presenting. He was a note trader. So what he would do is he would buy and trade notes on properties.
Real quick,
Oh yeah.
sorry. Just quickly explain what a note is, just because I want it to be as basic as
Basic. Okay,
possible.
I knew. I was like, I'm gonna have to micro this. Like, okay.
Yeah.
When you get a mortgage on the property, that's considered a note. Just like think of it like that. Let's just
It's
dumb it
debt.
down, right? Your mortgage is essentially a promissory note that you are going to pay this bank back. Well, people invest in those too. So what he would do is he would find people that had a second mortgage that was in default, meaning like they did not pay their second mortgage. So the
Right.
house was going into foreclosure. He would contact the note holder of that second mortgage if it happened to be a private individual. So he wouldn't do it if it said Wells Fargo, but if it said John C. Trust, whatever, he would contact them and he'd say, hey, how about instead of foreclosing on this house, I'll just buy this note right off of you. So he would buy that note off of John C. Trust or whatever. Now he kind of controls the property. So this homeowner has two options. She either has to pay him back, and avoid her foreclosure, or he can foreclose on the property. Now, the hope is that there's equity in the property, so he gets the property back. You kind of follow me? I know there's a lot to that.
I think people got it. I think that's
That was,
good.
I
A
know
good
that's
enough
like, that could be
explanation.
heavy. That's, it's like, if you don't understand note trading and stuff.
If people have questions, just type it
But
in the
yeah,
chat.
type it in the chat, or like Google note trading and buying, selling notes and stuff. So that's what he did. And he said, he came up to me, hey, how are you? Whatever. We got to know each other. And he's like, you're a flipper. It's funny. I might have a house I'm taking back in Garden Grove. And when I take it back, I'm not going to want to fix it up. I'm going to sell it to an investor. So like, maybe I can sell it to you. Perfect. I was like, yes, let me know. So a couple weeks later, he calls me. He's like, hey, just letting you know, I took that house back. We got it in the foreclosure. Would you be interested? I said, okay, sure. So I made him an offer for the property. I still remember it was like 225,000, I think was the amount, something like that. This is back in the day when prices didn't go crazy in California yet. It was,
Right.
I want to say like 2012, 2013 or something.
Okay.
And so I bought the property from him, totally like legally through title and escrow, everything, did all the things. And he said, okay, the only thing is you're going to have to evict her. I'm not dealing with the eviction. You take care of her. You have to evict the previous homeowner.
The worst thing in California ever.
Yeah, it's really not that bad, honestly. Like, I feel like
Is it?
No, it's not that bad. But I guess everybody has tolerance. That's subjective, right?
We're going to talk about that
Yeah,
because I need
you
to.
have some trauma, or you have something in your head about evictions, or
Well, I just really have no idea. People just tell me things, right? I assume that like in California, it's incredibly hard to do an eviction. Like
yeah.
in some places, almost impossible. And I'm mainly wholesale. Like I've
Yeah.
done a couple flips, but like I've never done an eviction. So you're the first person who's told me it's not really that big of a
It's
deal.
not that
So
big of a deal.
I
Yeah.
love that. So
It's
I would
not.
definitely want to keep hearing
It's
this
just
story.
like you
So.
have a belief, right? You have a limiting belief because someone told you it, and so
Well,
it's in
yeah,
your
I have no
head.
idea. I've never done it before,
Right.
so I love
Just
it.
like lawsuits ruin your life, right? Like
Right, there
that
we
was
go. And then you just got
yeah.
to do it, and it's not as bad.
And then you're like,
So
oh, that wasn't even that bad. And so, and no, and trust me, if they were that bad, now I will, okay, I digress though. The COVID situation, that's a whole other thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking
right,
about the memorandum or anything. I'm just talking about just basic like evictions under normal climates, like not that bad. Like you'll live, you'll live
right,
through it.
love it.
But so I said, okay, fine. I've evicted before, not a big deal. So I serve her a cash for keys. I always offer cash for keys first. I said, hey, I'll pay you like $2,500 if you just leave and make it easy.
Right.
Or I'm gonna have to evict you. Here's your date that you have to be out. Blah 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 blah. I get a phone call from her, and she is like, "You are going to be pulling my dead body out of that house if you think that I'm going to be leaving." And this was a fraudulent foreclosure. There's no way you rightfully own this house. And so she got me. Now, this is because I was new and I didn't fully understand everything. Like, I
Mhm.
kind of believed her. She had me going. She said that the foreclosure never happened. It was fraudulent. I don't know how you bought this house. There's no way. Like, there's so much behind this house. You have no idea what you got yourself into. You've been defrauded as well. All this stuff, right?
But you had gone through title, right? Like when you bought
Yeah.
it?
But
Okay.
when you've only been doing this business like 13 months, like
Right.
what do you know? Like I'm
Right.
like, really? Like I literally believed her. Like I
It
was
was
like,
also sorry to interrupt, but
no,
it was also like there wasn't nearly as much education in like
no.
2012, right? Like I mean, like now there's gurus freaking everywhere. Like you can learn so much on YouTube. I feel like I don't even know what was on YouTube at that point.
Not much, but it doesn't matter if all you did was wholesaling, like Jonah, put yourself in the shoes of someone who's only been in this 13, 14 months and you
Right.
bought a house, you didn't wholesale it, you bought the home.
Yeah.
And then the old
Rough.
person says, no, 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 no. That foreclosure, there's stuff before that happened that this property is going to be in litigation and you're stuck with it. Like
Mhm.
that's all I was told is basically everything that happened before you it was fraudulently done and I'm already getting an attorney and now you just bought it. So now you're screwed too.
The
Like that's what
worst.
she was telling me. I was like, okay, then this is a real thing. Unwinding foreclosures is something that some people do that they try to
Mhm.
unwind for. What she was trying to attempt was to unwind her foreclosure.
Right.
So, but what's unfortunate is like when you foreclose and it gets to this state, now there's this person here that's like stuck holding, the hot potato, like,
Right.
and I'm like, what? I had no idea. So here's a couple things I did wrong, right? First of all, I stayed on the phone with her. I should have never given her my phone number. I should have never, no, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Like, I should have just like put everything in writing. If you need to talk, you can email me. Like, I didn't know better. So that phone call was important in my case. Fast forward.
You recorded the phone call?
No,
Oh,
I wish I would have. I wish I would have. And I wish I would. Yeah, I do. I wish I would have had the ability to do that. But no. So fast forward a couple weeks later, she says, basically, if you try to take this home from me and you try to kick me out, I'm going to sue you too.
Right.
But I'm already suing the person that sold your house, this house to you. And I was like, okay, like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, leave you in here for free, lady? Like, I don't know,
Right.
So later I got, I got a hold of the guy that sold me the home, and he said, no, she's crazy. Like, hello, Lauren, she foreclosed on her house. Like, she's crazy and she's pissed and like, whatever. So fast forward, I keep trying to evict her. I go through the whole thing, or I serve her notice, all that. And it's getting now to like, okay, like it's happening. I open up my door and someone goes, are you Lauren Hardy? I go, yeah. And I get served. And I was like, what?
Right.
And it was like the scariest moment. I still remember that as probably one of the most awful moments of my life. Like, just pure fear, just not knowing. And this thing was this thick. This thing was this thick. It was heavy. Like I was like winded carrying it. It was so heavy. I was like, oh my God. And you got to imagine, I'm a mom. I'm like 26 or 27. Like, I'm not that old. I'm a mom. My little kid's like, Mom, who's that? Like, it was like, right. Like, when my kids are home, my daughters, one of them's napping, the other one's 3 years old. She's like, Mommy, what's that? And I'm just like,
what a wild thing. Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but I would imagine being like, oh God, like, I don't even know what I'm going to say to you right now. You wouldn't understand it. And I also really don't want to tell you anyways.
I was literally like, I remember she's like, I still remember this moment because she was in this process of making a box into an airplane. So then she was just like, what's that? I don't care. Make me an airplane. Like, and I was like, okay. And I'm like hacking at this box with like a knife, trying to make an airplane. And I just put cause you can't, it's crazy when you have kids, y'all listening who have children get this, right? It doesn't matter. You can have a gun to your head. You're like, or I'll just make this airplane that my 3-year-old's demanding right now.
Right.
So I'm making her some paper airplane or the box airplane thing. And I'm like panicking. I have to wait until she can go to sleep so I can like compose myself and actually open up the first page of this thing. And I read about 2 pages and I'm about to pass out. I'm just like, I see the words like Lauren Hardy, fraud, conspiracy. Like, she said, I conspired, swear to God. She said, I conspired with the previous note holder. We conspired to steal her home.
Damn.
And that, like, as soon as he took the house back, I bought it so quickly because that we conspired to do that. So the reason behind that is there's a protection called me being what's called a bona fide purchaser. So technically we could have won this at the motion, which meant like we can squash it real quick. It would have gotten, they call it quashed, like quick, because I was a bona fide purchaser. It was like, sorry, lady, like you got yourself in this. That's just the way the law works. It's like, if you let it get this bad and then some poor innocent person purchased your house, well, too bad, it's not her fault. Like, and you're just going to have to lose your home, like, and deal and civilly sue the other person, but you've lost the house. Well, she tried to argue the bona fide purchaser by saying that I fraudulently conspired with this guy to immediately buy it, but there was preemptive, like I knew about this house before, even though, like, you know, I could prove I didn't even know the guy before. So when you're getting frivolously sued, what a common technique an attorney will do is they will put multiple causes of actions, which is basically throwing, you know, spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. So there was like 13 causes of actions. Like
Right.
I'm like 13 things I did wrong in like a span of like a week. Like,
Yeah.
and all of them were ridiculous. All of them were just awful. It was
Yeah.
awful
Yeah.
having to go through it.
I get it. So
Mhm.
let me ask you real quick. So, I mean, obviously, you said like you're panicking, like you can't go to bed, like something is happening that's like truly screwing with you. So, how did you deal with that? Because obviously, you can't get too many nights without sleep. So,
Mhm.
like, what? Because I really want to get into, because I think I've had moments like that of like pure terror at some
Mhm.
point. Like I had it, like this is my own story. Is I had someone threaten to sue me. They didn't actually sue me, but they threatened to sue me, and I hadn't done a single deal yet. So like I
Oh.
immediately was just like, okay, I'm not doing this. I do not have the resources to defend myself whatsoever.
Mhm.
So I really do want to get into the emotional side, especially about like
Yeah.
how did you deal with that terror? I
Yeah.
would say.
For sure. So there's phases. The first, like, I remember just like Googling how to get through a lawsuit, like emotion. I literally Googled and I read an article about it. And I remember
Oh,
this
nice.
article said the only way to get through it is to get through. Like, that's
Right.
it. You have to get through, and you have to understand that this is going to be a very long process.
Mhm.
And it's just something like you're going to have to endure. So the first stages of this, I would say stages like week 1, week 2 was like crying. Like I cried. I remember crying to my
Oh,
mom,
no.
like just crying all the time. Like I told my friends when it first happened, I told my friends, I'll never forget this. Like your friends who aren't business owners, they don't get it. They're
Oh,
like, well,
that's like the worst idea, I
don't
feel
ever tell your
like.
friends that aren't business owners. They won't understand. Like, I remember they're like, well, Lauren, you had to do something wrong to get sued. Like, nobody just gets
That's
sued.
the worst.
You had to have
What
done something wrong.
terrible advice.
I
Like, that's
know.
so bad. Like, we
Yeah.
should get
So
into that too after this, is like why you don't tell friends who aren't in the business
yeah.
anything or
It-
expect any advice from them.
no, don't tell your friends. The first thing I did, I'm very lucky. I have a very smart dad. So
Mhm.
I couldn't even read the lawsuit. It was too, I can handle a lot. And this was like, I couldn't.
Right.
Like, I'm like, Dad, I can't read this. I need you to tell me what I'm being sued for. It's like, I'm gonna
Okay.
lose my mind. It's literally 1,000 pages long. And like I can't handle it. Like I see fraud and conspiracy and I'm gonna throw up. Like, so I went to my dad's house and my dad's very stoic and he's very just
Nice.
cool, calm, and collected. So he's like, I still remember him just being like, all right, let's take a look. Like, just had a
Yeah.
good attitude about it. It was just kind of almost like proud of me in a way, like that I'm going through
That's
this.
cute.
Like he's just like, I got this. It's fine. Let me see
Wait,
this.
real
Yeah.
quick, I'm gonna interrupt just because I'm curious. So, like, your dad, was he a business owner, or like, why do you was that just always his attitude of like keeping cool when stuff was going on? I'm just curious.
He's a pretty cool cucumber.
Okay.
And he was a college professor and he had a rental portfolio. But he wasn't like a full-blown entrepreneur. He had his rental portfolio. He day trades, like he's a stock trader. Like, so he has like
Okay.
some entrepreneurial ventures, but like I would say not full-blown business. So but he did have rentals. So, like he did have stuff that he had to deal with, in real
Right.
estate. But no, cool as a cucumber. I just waited for his email back and he put down in an Excel document all of like just the things, like kind of the high level points in it so I could just digest it a little easier, like
Right.
being sued for this, like cause of action 12, this, like
Right. Right.
whatever. So like, okay, I understand now what I'm being sued for. And yeah, so first stage was just crying and I lost like 7 pounds or something, which wasn't the worst
Oh
thing in the world. Like,
no.
oh yeah, I couldn't even eat. I was like, oh my God, super stressed. And then I found an attorney. My friend recommended an attorney and I, had a meeting scheduled and it's like everything takes forever. It's like, okay, we'll meet with you next week. I'm like, why can't you meet with me now?
Right.
And so met with an attorney. Luckily, the attorney had figured out that much of my case is very much covered under title insurance. So
Right.
he's like, he does title insurance work for the title insurance company I use. So he was like, I'll get your case assigned to me and I'm going to get it all paid for. So my
Nice.
attorney fee, that was like the first, like, okay, you got to look for like when you're in that situation, sort of like, well, okay, there's a bright side here, bright side there. There's always little wins. And that was a massive win, was like my attorney fees were covered. Really.
I have a question for you, because this is also an educational point.
Mm-hmm.
If title, like, because they were suing you over something that happened before
Mm-hmm.
you bought it, right?
Mm-hmm.
In theory, no matter what, like, let's say that lady was 100% right, wouldn't the onus be on title to have found that out, correct? Like, in the way, wouldn't you be able to sue title for screwing that up? I think that's how it would work. I don't know if you.
Yes, you would think. Okay. When they put 13 causes of action, they also include like personal damages, like
Okay.
$90,000 in my, stress
Right.
because I was stressed out
Whatever.
and, whatever, emotional
Bunch of
duress.
BS.
Mm-hmm. So technically, what I would have been recouped, but there were other things she put in there that were, so that I would
Nothing
not
to
have.
do with it. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. And that's what they do. Throw spaghetti on
Right.
the wall. They try to bury you. They bury you.
Right.
That's what they do. So I was getting buried. Yeah. So, but if it's very straightforward title stuff that happened all before you and it falls under your title insurance policy, then yes, you technically get recouped the purchase price of the property and stuff, and the property, whatever. Like,
Gotcha. I was
they
just
pay for it.
curious.
No, you're right, but just
Okay.
not in this situation. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So, and it's so crazy because I remember I thought about this lawsuit every single day, multiple times a day. I would stress about it. And after like about 2 weeks, I go, okay, well, I better make a lot of money because I'm going to probably have to pay for something. Like, this is going to get real expensive. So I just came up with a plan instead of worrying and like wallowing in my pity and giving up and like getting out of the business altogether. I was like, no, I'm going to make money. Like,
I love it.
I'm going to figure out how to do the most deals I've ever done because back is against the wall. I need to make sure I make enough money to pay for whatever I just got into.
What made that switch? I'm curious, like what switched in your mind from just panicking, crying, all of that to like, all right, screw this. I'm going to do just as many deals as I possibly can. So even if I completely lose this, I'm going to be fine.
I mean, I don't know. I think I'm a pretty logical person. And it was like, okay, option one is just like stress, quit, and go get a full-time job again and just like be miserable again. Or like just try a little harder and make more money and this lawsuit won't even matter.
Right.
Like, and I just picked the better one, right? The better one is obviously the one here,
Right.
Yeah. So I just put a lot of focus into my business and I focus on the money making activities of my business. That deal, I did more flips, that year than like I ever did. I raised my deal volume count significantly that year. I had also heard, the thing is after like, a couple months of this, because you think like a lawsuit's going to be over. Like, you're like, oh no, okay, this will be over in 2 months. Right. No, like, no. Lawsuit didn't get dismissed. Like, I thought it was going to get dismissed. It didn't. Then it goes to a motion to summary judgment. Didn't win there. And like, just that process took 8 months. So like now they're trying to get it into trial, right? Like the whole, when I started realizing, yeah, you're in this for the long haul, you almost, after a while, like you've just adjusted to like this thing that this weight on your shoulder, like it's a weight on your shoulder. And at first it's crippling and you can't walk. And then eventually you start getting up a little bit and you're like, like, okay, I'm walking, but it's a huge weight. And then eventually you grow some muscles and you can hold it and you're fine and you keep walking and you're like, it's eventually going to go away. And it did. It took 18 months. And I remember being like, there was a point where I go, I haven't thought about my lawsuit in 3 days.
Nice.
Like you get to that point. And I imagine this is for anybody who's maybe dealt with illness, cancer, any kind of terrible thing, a divorce, any kind of traumatic situation. That's the best analogy.
Life goes on.
Life goes on.
Eventually you have to make it where like you just keep pushing forward. Like I totally get that in the sense I haven't dealt with something that lasted 18 months that was freaking me out. But there's just got to be a point where it's like, well, screw it. It's just there. Yeah. What's going to happen is going to happen. I'm curious, like in the sense of Actually, keep going in the story, and then I'm going to ask this question. Like, I got a question in the back of my mind, but I want to hear.
Yeah.
I want to hear the resolution first.
Well, okay. Another thing that I did that was really beneficial to me is I really took the time to understand law and how lawsuits work. I mean, every element of it. Like, I basically took a course in law school. Like,
Right.
I was like, I went all in. Like, I need to know all the things, what this is, what's this step, what's that mean, what these words mean. And that made me feel really empowered. And I remember telling myself, I go, man, but you know what? I'll probably never get sued again. Or if I do, like, I'm going to be in better shape. Like, I'm going to understand everything. I'm going to know in my business things to not do to make sure I don't get sued. So I'm very careful. Like, I'm very careful in my business. Like, now, because of that experience, like, I know, like, there's certain things you got to be careful and don't do, and
Right.
like talking to a crazy lady on the phone, like, I now know, like, put that in writing. Everything's in writing. And, so I learned a lot. And 18 months later, she tried to push it to trial. It did not make it. There's this one step before trial. I always forget what it's called. Some conference. I don't remember what it's called at the top of my head right now.
Mediation? I don't know.
No, it's not mediation. This isn't mediation. Mediation's like you don't go to lawsuit at all.
Right. Gotcha.
It's a pretrial conference, something like that, like pretrial conference or something, where you meet with a judge, like a judge. There's a judge that does this, and he meets with both parties, and his goal, like his job, is to avoid trial because it's costly on the state. So what he does is he speaks with both parties in a room, quiet little room, and he looks at, like, your case, studies it, whatever, and he tells which party, like, hey, you have a good chance of winning. Hey, you're a loser. Like, you're never going to win this. Don't waste your time. You're going to spend all this money. Like, he tries to convince the person, to kind of just drop it and settle. And the goal is, at the end, you settle. And most cases don't go to trial because of this conference. So we made it to that. And he said to her, you have no chance of winning. Like, that there's no chance. Like, you will never win this. And he came to us, like, just kind of loud. Like, I remember being all nervous, and we're like locked in the room, and he's just laughing. He's like, there's no way she's going to win. Like, nice. And I told her that, like, she's never going to win this. This is so frivolous. Like, my God, like, who's this attorney that filed it? And it looked really bad on the attorney. Like, like, it was just like, attorneys that take on these cases are so low rent. And so anyway, we settled for like $4,000. Like, and my title company paid that. So, like, title will tell your attorney, like, here's the limit, negotiate up to this. Like, and so he had an amount to play with, and he just said, like, she was like, I'll settle for $90,000. And he was like, $4,000. Take it or leave it.
I love that. I love that a lot. I love that story because I really like what you said about the muscles, right? Because I really feel like that's how people should really think. I have this saying, I think I said this in the last podcast, where I mean, I didn't come up with this. I heard this from someone, where there's only two ways to motivate someone. It's aspiration and desperation. So obviously, like, it's great to have the aspiration. You want to do great things in the world, strive for more, feed your family, like, help others feed their family, all of that. But then there's desperation. And I think desperation is more important, like, whatever it is. Like, I think comfort really screws people. For instance, like, how many extra deals, like, I'm curious if you might even be a little bit grateful for it because A, you got stronger, and B, like, how many extra deals do you think you did?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I'm super grateful. I don't remember, like, I remember before that date, it was like I flipped 2 houses my first year, and then it was like 3 my second year. And then while going through, because it was like I got sued, then, like, going through the lawsuit, it was like the 3rd year. I don't remember the exact amount, but I want to say I actually flipped 11 to 15, something like that.
Wow.
And actual flips, like, they weren't wholesales.
I mean, you quintupled your volume.
Yeah,
You
like quadrupled
to quintuple.
Crushed it. Yeah. Was like, I'm going to be a very aggressive buyer, and, like, crushed it. And
I love it.
Yeah, just because that. And then this is the best part of the story. So the real estate market was, like, just skyrocketed while I held that house. So I ended up making a ton of money on that home, and I was fine.
Love it.
Yeah, I flipped it. It was fine. I lived.